Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzaro-Mossi Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Actually, I do like that shot. It's quite nice.
All right, we're recording. I'm going to give it a few seconds and then we'll count down. 5, 4, 3. Hello, and welcome back to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and Television. Today, we have another special episode.
Sort of, kind of.
We got contacted by an old friend of the show, Andres Rovira, to see if we were interested in reviewing his new short film, Noche Buena. And I said, yeah, we'll check it out and we'll put that up. So
Give it a whirl.
We watched it earlier today, and we're gonna do our normal MOTS review. So let's do it. I'm gonna start off with a funny log line, and this is kind of just like every family holiday dinner that you've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, the movie, of course.
But it with a Cuban twist. So,
no. If you will.
And then I'm going to get started with the plot as well. So it's basically kind of what I just described. Like, you go in, there's a bunch of family members that it all kicks off pretty quickly because this thing's only 15 minutes long. So you go in, there's a bunch of family members arguing about different things that are happening, especially in the world right now. Specific focus on like kind of Trump's policies and Republican versus Democrat debates almost, or progressive versus conservative type of debates. And that kind of goes through the main character who so I'm ashamed to admit it, but I've forgotten everybody's names, and usually we look up names beforehand, but I couldn't find the names of all these characters anywhere.
I think it's Carla, Steve. I'm pretty sure, but not 100% sure.
So we're going to call her Carla. I hope that's correct.
Close enough. Go with that.
Sorry, Andres, if it's not. So Carla is kind of an observer throughout this whole thing. She's just kind of watching her whole family argue and kind of gets disrespected or feels disrespected by her fiance, who is a, not to mince words, kind of a scumbag.
The D-bag, sure.
Yeah. And, or actually not her fiance, her boyfriend at the time, he ends up proposing, which is her cue to like kind of have a somewhat of the family, like the breakdown.
The reason you suck speech.
Yeah. And she kind of yells at all of her family members. And then that guy gets the hell out of there, and the family kind of makes up and has a seemingly decent rest of Christmas Eve, all before the flan. And then the last line is, where's the dessert, basically. And,
is that what it is? Like, we couldn't figure it out. Okay.
Yeah, I think she was asking about, is like, does anybody want flan?
Okay, gotcha. I couldn't quite. I thought I made it out like and like the first phrase in Spanish, but I just couldn't figure out the whole phrase. So thank you. That does make sense. And good little wrap up.
Yeah. So what did you guys think?
I mean, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'll just jump in. Like, I'm looking at possibly a 3. Like you said, Sivo, yes, this is very short, 15 minutes long, but I think it packs in a lot. Like, it's a very relatable situation. I think it's an enjoyable, a little, like, again, sort of vignette pretty much. And yeah, I think everyone did a good job in it. It's like you said, the logline you said perfectly describes it. And I think the acting quite nicely was very believable. I believe this family would be having these arguments. So for what it is, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm looking at a possible 3, 2 at least. So
it's quite a bit of, that accelerated quickly.
Yeah.
Especially when the surprise beer comes in towards the end. And all culminating with the Christmas tree coming crashing down. So there's a really good pace to this work where it handles introducing all these different characters. It's quite a large cast for such a short
like 8
film.
to 10 family members, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the main family, the kids' table is less so, but all like the main family at the table, I understand their motivations. I understand their point of view of the world, even if they are representative of a certain viewpoint in order to make a comment about that viewpoint. But I think everyone was, aside from maybe the guy who's vaping constantly,
stupid stoner cousin or whatever.
All of them were kind of fleshed out. It gets kind of ridiculous at the end, but it ramps up to the midsection of the work is very good when everything starts breaking down and the truth bombs start hitting.
Yeah.
Then it takes a next level up, but it all wraps up a very nice Christmas spirit. So I'm going to give it a Noche Buena.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more about the pacing. I thought it was paced incredibly well, especially for like a 15-minute movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I was telling the guys, and I told Beth before this, I think it was wish fulfillment, the film, because how many times have you sat there at a family occasion and just wanted to be like, shut the fuck up, you this, you that.
Fuck you, you're cool, and I'm out.
Oh, that should have been the log line.
What's that? Fuck you, and
you're
I'm
cool.
out.
No,
cool.
fuck you, you're cool, I'm out.
Because, everything is relatable, as one of you guys said. The pacing is great. It was 15 minutes, and it most certainly did not feel that way. I mean, we've all been on those family occasions where you just want everybody to shut the fuck up, and it feels like dinner's taking forever, and all you want to do is go home. It's like there's certain parts of it that were just like kind of uncomfortable to watch, just because we've all been there.
Oh, there were.
Ian left the room for a minute or two because of the awkwardness.
So did Beth. But yeah, I agree with the 3. I quite enjoyed this little vignette. I thought there was some the absurdity didn't go too far. And I really liked, from a political standpoint, and I don't want to like bug in the themes, but like you didn't have a whole liberal versus whatever, because they really attacked kind of like the woke politics of things, as well as
they attack the hypocrisy of almost every single person at that table.
Yeah.
Aside from the nerdy white guy,
the plant guy.
And I quite like the children's table, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm going to give it a 3. It's a solid outing.
I'm going to give it a 2 because of, I'm impressed by what they did within the time frame, but it's a weird thing. I'm almost punishing it for its ambition because it was intended to be ambitious, and I don't think it. I don't think it hit the 3 level. I don't have a really good explanation for it, but in the sense, some of the characters were kind of one-dimensional. Perhaps if stretched out a little bit longer to delve into it a little bit, I think the point would have been stronger, but I think it was a very strong 2.
I wouldn't want to be with these people at more than 15 minutes. So.
Well, you weren't.
That's kind of what I was going to say. I'm going to give it a 2 as well, just because I think it needed a little bit more time to develop a couple of the characters. It was absolutely fine at the length that it was, and I'm sure that that was kind of the point, was to keep it pretty short. I know that I'm fairly certain this is his first movie after the feature length that we
After Darkness.
that we reviewed. So like I wanted to kind of see a little bit more from a couple of these characters, specifically like the vaping guy. I wanted to know what his deal was. Like he was kind of,
that was his deal. But I know what you mean. Yeah.
that's very one-dimensional, like you could have given him a little bit more of a story. Like the father, I kind of wanted to like know a little bit more about his like relationship with everybody and things like that. So that's a strong 2. I liked it a lot, but I am going to like reserve that 1 point on this question.
All right, I'll make one final point to you guys. I'm going to stick with 3, and it's this weird way, it's an opposite a situation where we normally say it felt longer than it is, but I think that's a positive in this instance.
Without question.
So I think that sort of like goes to the pacing that you guys mentioned. So that's why I think it bumps it up just enough for me, even if it is a very short, if you will. I think the way it encapsulates the plot itself is good enough for a 3 for me. So
I mean,
sounds good.
Yeah, the reason I am giving it a 3 is I'm rewarding the pacing of the film.
Fair enough. Ian, let's talk about themes.
Honesty is the best policy.
Honesty versus hypocrisy.
If people were willing, so there's a common motif throughout this, or I don't know if it's motif, but stylistically, where they have a truth about the character appear in text next to them, pointing out their hypocrisy or kind of almost a hidden fact about them. That works really well in exposing what they're saying versus who they are. And it does point out, delving into the hypocrisy of every single person at that table. But also the fact that it rewards people being honest. It rewards, the entire family comes together when, Clara, was it?
Clara's cousin, you mean?
No, Clara.
Carla,
yeah. She just tells, points out the box of everyone, and it reunites the family through that.
True.
So I think that it's kind of, I think you pointed out that it's wish fulfillment. It's a cathartic film. It's someone saying what you've always wanted to point out to your family members and almost give you permission to do so because it's rewarded at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all accurate. I don't have much more to add, or I'm not going to certainly argue against it, but I said it, maybe it ties hand in hand and maybe even goes to dialogue a little bit, where I think all that stuff is addressed very nicely. Yes, it certainly has a catharsis element to it because, like I said, it's a very relatable situation, or at least I purport that it is. And so, yeah, given that the sort of that one moment where she just goes off on everybody, and that folds back into the setup from earlier, like you said, like the funny little descriptions that are shown text next to characters. So yeah, I think it encapsulates all that very nicely, very organically, I guess I want to say. Mm-hmm. So I'm certainly giving Themes a 1. I think it's...
Oh, they all felt like real people.
Yeah, exactly. It's relevant. It's easy enough to understand. It's not, but it's also not dumbed down in any way. So I think it works quite well.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have anything to add. I really, it was almost like a nature documentary. You were there.
Uh-huh.
I really felt,
Sure.
I really felt it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you guys. I think that the themes are pretty strong. I think that there is something there. I feel like there is something like to be explored with each one of these characters, which is nice. And you know, like they each have their own like kind of little rabbit hole you can go down. You could theoretically go down with each one of them, but yeah, just kind of the family dynamic and exploring the differences, like how the differences of all these characters play into the family dynamic and how the family dynamic plays into the way that they interact with each other as well, is really interesting to see in this. So I'm going to give it a pretty strong 1.
I have one more point to make. I was hoping one of you would address it, but the exploration of the Cuban American viewpoint is very interesting because I have a lot of students who come from different Hispanic backgrounds, and whether they're from South America or from the island, you have all, like, it's not a monolith like some people treat it in America. Each individual has entirely different policies that they're dealing with. And I think this is an interesting exploration of,
that's a good point.
Like kind of a snapshot of how Cuban Americans, who are notoriously conservative as well, and you see that play out.
Sure. My final add-on is that I just thought of this now. It sort of reminded me a little bit of The Farewell. So like it maybe had more space to breathe. It'd be sort of like that. But yeah, I think they both have a similar sort of vibe to them, and I think that is a positive thing. So I'm giving it a 1 to Themes as well.
All right, that's 1s all around for that. And Chris, why don't you tell us about who you think the antagonist is?
Well, right off the bat, I'm going to say it's the greasy bohunk of a boyfriend,
Fredo, Cuban Fredo.
The Cuban Fredo. But by the same token, this is a difficult one because there's no one person who is the antagonist. I think, the antagonist could be the situation. I feel like I'm not really sure how to fall on this one because I am kind of like moving more towards a 0 out of no fault to the film, but it seems like we got everything from her point of view, and it feels like that everything is antagonizing her for a different reason. So I'm going to hand it off to you guys because I'm really on the fence with this one.
Well, I mean, that's what I was going to say, like to not what you said, but everyone is the antagonist, like, because that's how the family dynamic is. And even like beyond that, I'll go back to what you said. It's basically everyone's hypocrisies and insecurities to a degree. So like, I don't think either everyone, even Carla herself, could consider to be an antagonist on various ways, various angles, or it's just the hypocrisy inherent in humanity, and specifically in a family dynamics of this nature of social gathering. So I think that works for me. Like, I feel it's very relatable and is clear enough to be a one on the antagonist front. At least that's how I'm looking at it. So,
yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I don't know. I see more of like the, I see the bohunk, as you call him, Chris, as probably the main antagonist, because he ends up like drawing the ire of the entire family, even the ones who claim to be his like allies at the beginning, you know, the father and stuff, who was like, yeah, it's Baga and all that, at the beginning, at the end says like, I never liked him. But like, and you know, like that's the way things like that go a lot of times too. If it's not him specifically, I mean, because I think that we're calling her Carla. I hope that's her name. If not, I'm sorry.
It'll be that for the rest of the review. So go on.
If Carla is the main character, then you know, he's the reason that she gets really upset. It's not all the other. She's used catalyst. She's used to all these other things happening at her, seemingly like at her family, you know, events and things like that. It doesn't seem like it's all that different, except for that this guy tries to propose to her right after she found out that he lied to her a year ago or whatever. So I see him as kind of the, if nothing else, the lit fuse on a powder keg, right? That's already happening.
Sure.
I think it's all fairly effective. I found her antagonized throughout, regardless of who you say it's by.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
The entire, film. So I'm going to give it a 1, I think.
What I think was very well captured here is that because Carla, if that is her name, is the protagonist of the story, the Bo is the main antagonist,
the direct antagonist.
But if it had followed any of the other members of the family as protagonists, they would have an antagonist at that table.
That's kind of what I'm getting at too.
But I'm just drawing the line between both those points, and I think that because of the fact that most of these characters were fairly fleshed out, they each had a story to tell and had their own issues there. So I think I'm going to have to give it a 1.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's strong enough on all fronts, like on any angle, like they said, regardless of which way you look at it, it still is enough for me on any of them for a 1.
Yeah, I think you guys convinced me. I mean, it's a good point that, you know, if Carla's the antagonist, he was her, and he was the itch she couldn't really scratch. And then I think you said it well as like, you know, he was the lit fuse on a powder keg. So yeah, you guys, good job. Good 1.
There you go.
Scott, why don't you take us through protagonist?
Well, I think we all agree that Carla, or insert whatever her character's actual name here, but for now, so like it opens up with her on a phone call. It sets up the proposal thing as well, and it sets up like where she is and like the scenario that's about to unfold. And I think like she's a well-balanced character, was very well acted. And again, they all were, for sure. Don't get me wrong, but I think because it's framed through her viewpoint, through her eyes, I think it does a nice job of sort of giving you the insight to her family dynamics, like we just talked out, and this the powder keg, like you said, Steve-O, like that explodes at this particular Christmas dinner. So I think she did a good job, and she probably by default, like because of that, is the most fleshed out character. But not to say that the other family members weren't fleshed out to some degree, more or less, as well. And we'll get to that certainly in a second. But I think all that to say, I think she deserves a pretty damn solid 1, and I'm going to give her 1.
The tensions she felt throughout most of the conversation was palpable. Is that the right word? Yeah. And I think that as the audience surrogate here, she also she did a good job of portraying the unease that you feel watching this unfold.
You yourself personally left the room for about a minute or so.
I think when the proposal happened, because I knew nothing. because I was as mortified as she was
Yeah,
that occurred.
That's very effective then. Yeah, sure. Exactly. That's what you're saying. I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. What I would say to some extent is I'm not sure. I feel like you get maybe more information about the other characters than you do about her, because she's, I think, supposed to be the audience surrogate, right? Like, she's kind of who you want the audience to project themselves on. So, like, what do you know about her personal life? Because you know, like, more things about, I think, a lot of the other characters' personal lives than you do about hers, because she doesn't really say much until she's like, "Oh, you lied to me," and then she gives a whole speech, but it's about all the other characters that she's giving that speech about. It's not really about herself.
But I think even that in itself, Steve-O, is sort of like a revealing of her personality to an extent. I would report to you.
Yeah, but it's part of the catharsis of what this is trying to do, is to allow you to imprint yourself on her. So when she's telling off all of these tropes in a way of individuals, you can picture yourself being the one who does that. And I think that was the point of her as a protagonist, and I think that if that was what the intent of it was for, I think it was effective.
I think it works both ways. Either way is all I'm saying. So
I completely agree with that, Ian, and I think that's the case, and I think it works really well. So I wasn't trying to say that I was going to take away credit for that, but I think that it was interesting to see. You find, like, she kind of sits quietly as you find out about all these other characters, and then finally it's her turn, but you're still talking about all the other characters as she's doing her thing. Anyway, that's my take, so I'm gonna give it a 1.
Yeah, officially a 1 for me for sure.
Yeah, 1.
All right. That's gonna bring it back to me with supporting characters. So, like everybody else, there's the father who's kind of a Trump guy, but seemingly only because what's his name's there. Like they make mention to, like, him standing outside, like, protesting for Elian Gonzalez when he was coming when he came in to Miami, and
him admitting the fact that he's afraid that the Mexicans will legitimately take away
steal his
jobs
bakery. I think I think they say, like, huevos rancheros is delicious first of all.
It's dropped in there. Wait, there was that line.
Yeah, so he's actually one of the standouts to me. The what is she, like, little sister, I guess, or cousin or something?
Her cousin, I think.
Yeah, who gets outed by the guy's only job. Like, the guy who vaped, his only job in this movie was to out her. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
he was the catalyst for that little side, like, sort of.
But yeah, she had an interesting, like, kind of whole thing, and I love that it's like, you show, like, the strongly feminist also still on her dad's, like, her dad still pays for her cell phone or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
I know it was
not even conflicting things, but, like, this weird, like, juxtaposition of information.
I believe the phrase for her was is against the patriarchy, but Poppy still pays for her phone bills or something like that.
Yeah.
Very close to that. Yeah,
exactly. And what else? Who else is I gonna say? Like, you have the whole kids table thing. You have the abuela, at the head of the table, like, kind of running the family, but she's like, I love the fact that, like, they portray her as, like, kind of set in her ways, but it's only a 15-minute movie, and by the end of it, she's like, giving her granddaughter a kiss on the head, and, like, telling her that she's an important part of the family and things like that. So, and then there's I'll let you guys have everybody else. I went through a bunch of these characters already.
I have one character I want to talk about, the whitest man in the world, who
Ian in 30 years.
Thank you. Yes, because I actually have speech patterns quite like he does. Sorry for intruding, but studies have shown. I've never seen a character I felt more like, and I'm so happy he exists. Yeah. Especially when they do the "fuck you, you're cool." They do it. They do it to him, and he's genuinely surprised that no one had anything bad to say about him.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys were like, I mean, it's the rest of the family. So what, about 8, like I said, like, roughly people total. And I think they were all, like I said, fleshed out enough to varying degrees that organically believable as a family, and I think they all did a good job in their roles. And it was enjoyable little romp. So I'm giving them all collectively a pretty solid 1.
Yeah, I agree. I very much like the kids table. They were not kids. They're
like 20.
They're all like 20, which is kind of funny because like in Hollywood, for a teenager, most of them are going to be in their 20s anyway.
Oh, I still sit at the kids' table at my holiday dinners sometimes. So
yeah,
like,
I did it personally until I was 20 as well. In my life.
I have more in common with Gen Z than I do with Boomers. So,
exactly.
But I really liked them. They were just kind of sitting off, and then when is it Poppy starts having, he thinks he's having some kind of attack. They come out like, we put laxatives in your beer
because you're an alcoholic.
I mean, to me, that was the tension breaker right when you needed a tension breaker. I very much enjoyed them. I thought because they kind of weirdly set it up because there was something going on, and
no, they absolutely set that up very early. When they're like, "Poppy, you're pre-gaming for the pre-game or whatever." Like she was going through the house and like overhearing little snippets, and that was the one for him.
So, I'm going to give supporting a really strong 1. Not that I didn't like these characters because they did a great deal, well, except for the guy vaping, but without these people,
really taking it to him.
Without these people, there could be no film. So narratively speaking, they're going to get a 1 anyway. I just happen to really enjoy the supporting characters.
Yeah, I think it was quite solid.
Absolutely. Strong
I think it's ones all around, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sounds right. All right, Ian, dialogue.
I thought for the most part it was impressive. They really captured. It's kind of a weird mix because they were making points about, like, as mentioned earlier, almost tropes of a type of characters. One-dimensional characters who had a point to be torn down later. But whoever wrote the script for this did a masterful job of taking that concept but making it organic. And I have to give her credit for that. It occasionally felt a little bit overwrought, but for the most part, I think it worked.
I think even that was on purpose, at least to me. So I'm giving it a 1. Yes, I already mentioned I've overused the word organic and believable. Sorry, Chris, because I think we both do that. But I think it certainly fits here. And yeah, the script. Did Andres write the script, Steve-O? Did you know?
I believe he wrote and directed. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, spot on then for sure. Because I think it worked quite well. And for the most part, way more often than not, it was engaging. And again, even when it was awkward on purpose, not because it was like. You know what I mean?
I understand that occasionally it did feel like people were soapboxing a little bit.
Yeah, I guess, but
to a negative fashion. But I think that was few and far between.
I think it was almost like sort of a meta bent to me, even when those parts did happen. But either way, it's quite enough for a very solid 1. So,
to your point, Ian, with the soapboxing, when they started off that, I was just like, I didn't know where they were going to go with it. And the thing, I think it's important that the soapboxing, the tropes, and the subversion of all that, and then like bringing it back to a family that in a true family you're going to have your and even as friends and whatever, you're going to have your differences. You may have those that you diametrically don't agree with, and but at the end of the day, it's the connections underneath it, and I think the dialogue serviced all that really well.
Yeah, well said.
And at the same token, at times you did feel like it was, kind of written for the screen, but more times than not, it was very natural. So the dialogue's getting a solid 1 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that the dialogue was pretty strong throughout. I do agree, Ian. There were a couple times where it felt maybe a little bit overwrought, as you've said, but that was few and far between, and it got past it quickly, which was the most.
Yeah, it didn't derail it in any way.
I didn't think that it hurt those scenes where I was like, oh no, I was like concerned that it might degenerate a little bit, and it didn't at all. So that was, really good, very solid dialogue, and I am also going to give it a 1. So let's talk about style, Christopher.
I'm going to say that the style I found kind of interesting because getting back to the protagonist, the way it was set up was everything was shot from her point of view, even if it wasn't directly line of sight point of view. if that makes sense. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't so much of a first person narrative, but it was her observations. And this would be a very easy film to shoot very flatly, and I don't think it did. Like I said, it's not one of those. It's not groundbreaking cinematography, but by the same token, it also is very, very successful in establishing and maintaining the fact that this is Carla's point of view. And I have to give it a 1. I mean, it's well done, it's well structured, I unless anybody has anything that can convince me, it's
I mean, this is the one that was unsure of. Yes, I agree, Chris. It fits the format, so it's fine. It works. It's serviceable, I guess. And I'm not necessarily knocking it, but I think this is the weakest or like the least interesting part of this little short to me. So like, it's not bad style. It's not like it was confusing or incoherent or unable to follow. Yes, it was through her point of view, even if it wasn't like literally first person POV from Carla's angle, from her eyes. But I just think like it was fine. It was there. Just for me, it was like, again, the weakest part of the entire ensemble. So that's where I'm sort of leaning. Again, not that it was bad or it sucked or shitty, just not like the focal point, I guess.
I disagree completely with you because I think that specifically in character design, every single one of the players in this short had a distinct style to them that was, I think, we don't remember any of their names, but I have a lasting impression of visually of all of the characters.
Sure,
whether the abuela, whether the vaping guy. We have distinct characteristics. We bring up the smarmy we've been referencing their style over anything else there. And also, it's all shot at a dinner table, and I think that it was handled very well. I've seen it done far more poorly than that, and especially when the laxatives hit. There are a couple of good shots of the panic induced that comes down there, and like the Christmas tree crashing at the
that was a good scene.
The chaos. He handled the chaos very well when filming this. So I'm going to give it actually a very strong one.
Yeah, building off what you said, I like the fact that the chaos never got too chaotic in that you knew it was going on.
It never got slapstick.
Yeah, well, no, but it never got to the point where it was such a muddled mess you were asking who's doing what, where, and to whom. But also, given that it is a dinner table thing, it would have been really easy to mount the camera in the middle of the table and just, go around and do all sorts of cutaways. So I thought it was really effective. And Ian, to your point, I thought it was absolutely right on the money that we remember the style of each character, and that in of itself is worthy of a 1.
Yeah, you are definitely right about that. The style of the characters, the way they're dressed, even down to the kids' table with all wearing white or whatever,
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
they were very obviously like anytime they interacted with the other characters, you knew where they were from and all that. And the cinematography, I felt like it had this like kind of a manic feel, like in a good way. Like it was just jumping around and
yeah, well, how would it feel to be like in that chaotic situation,
jumping
right?
back and forth between characters and like in these arguments, but still like kind of under control to an extent, like you guys were saying. Yeah, so I agree. I think it's pretty good. Style wise, I think it's a solid job, and I'm going to give it a 1.
I think you guys convinced me with the character style thing. I think that's the thing that's going to tip it over for me. That's a really good call. Because like I said, like it was just the flattest part except for that. And since you pointed out, I think I will switch to a 1 for that for the most part.
Hey.
Yeah. Well done, sir.
All right.
Well done, boys.
That brings us to recommendation. Scott, why don't you get us started?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, it's literally like the least you can do in a sense. And it's really engaging. Like we said, like it's a very broadly applicable scenario that I think a lot of people, almost everyone can relate to some extent. And it's, it's not demanding. You just catch it for 15 minutes. It's almost like exactly that time. And I think it's quite worth it. It's a very nice little, not even experiment, like a nice little snippet, little vignette that again is enjoyable, and you can sort of get a lot out of it. It packs a lot into a little package, and I think I can give it a lot of credit for that. So, hell yeah, I recommend it.
There's I believe it's a YouTube, or it might be grander than that, but I see it on YouTube, series called Amuleto, which highlights up and coming filmmakers that do short films. I'm actually a big fan of this style of film when it comes to just short pieces, and this is up there with some of the best I've seen off of Amaretto, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. I think, yes, it's a little bit painful to watch, a little too real at times,
For some, sure.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching Mr. Ramosi's father on screen.
He did look like my dad.
A little bit.
But no, I fully recommend it.
Yeah, I recommend it too. It was a lovely little film, and I only mean that because it's a shorter work. They pack a lot into it. And the one thing I should have meant to bring during style was that I liked the you could tell that, getting back into the whole culture clash thing, that there was a certain amount of affluence here, but it wasn't extravagant affluence. It was like one of those places where, you go to somebody's house and it's very minimalistic, and they've got the space and they've got this beautiful tree that's designed to be a showpiece. It's not really designed to be
functional.
Yeah. There's no colored lights or ornaments. It's just there. I really, really enjoyed every aspect of this film, even when it got uncomfortable, because I knew it was 15 minutes. So however uncomfortable it was,
and it was on purpose.
We weren't going to be subjected to having to sit through 15 minutes of awkward silences. But also, again, it's very cathartic. I can see myself watching this again around the holidays. So I highly recommend it. It's 15 minutes and it's quite enjoyable.
Yeah, I completely agree. Definitely give it a look. It's only 15 minutes. Movie's
not well worth it.
Noche Buena. We'll put up the link. It's on YouTube for free, so it's very easy to get. And I am happy to support Andres in his future filmmaking. I know he has a couple more projects coming out. I don't want to say them in case I forget their names or I'm not remembering their names correctly. But we'll
edit it in later.
We will post those as well. So
what do we got?
This is going to be Chris and Scott. You both gave it a 10. And Ian and myself gave it a 9, so it's gonna be a 9.5. And for a 15-minute short film, this was really solid. It was a good 15 minutes, time well spent. I had a good time, and I think we're all happy to see good indie work being put out, and
man, always, of course,
helping us support it a little bit.
I was gonna say, even though I gave it a 10, I don't think it's a perfect 10, but I do think 9.5 is pretty damn deserving. So
I agree with what you just said.
Yeah.
And by the way, anybody watching this, the cord's short, so this is why
that's why he's leaning over.
I was wondering what the hell was happening over there.
Yeah, I mean,
we have some adjustments.
We could have stopped and extended his cord, but you know what? Whatever.
It's much.
I like it better this way.
And it also allows me to maintain social distance between me and the microphone.
Yes, of course.
Sure.
But no, I mean, this is why. So
got you.
All right. Well,
very nice.
I think that's going to do it. Like we said, 9.5 for Noche Buena, director Andres Rovira. And thanks for joining us this time on The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. I have been your host, Steve Ramosi, joined today by Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Have a good night.
Chris Morgan.
Feliz Navidad.
And Scott Thurlow.
And if the quarantine keeps up, nobody will have to deal with these kinds of family dinners because we won't be able to be with each other. So think about that. Good night. See you next time.
I just like the awkwardness between friends.
Ho, ho, ho.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Ramosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or Mott's?